by Kevy, the big walkout this week. I mean, mate, you could have been signed up for Neighbours. Just like that, mate. No problem at all.
Very talented, mate.
We're saving that for the Logies, mate. We're going to send in a special entry for that. This week, of course, let's get on to a serious note. Yesterday, the Crushers decided that they would stay loyal with the ARL. And joining us to discuss that decision is Crushers Chief Executive, Darryl van der Velde. Now, Darryl, as I said, the decision was to stay with the ARL. Is that it now, signed, sealed and delivered?
Yeah, sure it is, Chris. You know, we've agonised over long enough, and eventually, you know, both very, very attractive offers, financial packages, but at the end would come down to a moral issue, we believe, and a legal issue, and obviously that'll be probably finalised in the courts in September sometime, but you know, we'd signed a 5-year agreement back in November, and then also reaffirmed it again in February, and basically, we weren't harassed into that. We didn't able to put a gun to our head. We deliberated over for about 3 days. We also had our legal people look at it, and so we believe we signed that in good faith, and as it does to the other 19 clubs.
Darryl, you talked about morals and emotion in the last couple of days that came into the decision. Were they the main things you were concerned about?
Well, it come down to that, Gary. You know, obviously the financial package was very, very good for both parties. You know, in the first year, but you know, long term, I think the Super League proposal would have been better for the club. But you know, we still believe this has got to be decided in the courts, or otherwise there's got to be a compromise. And you know, we can't go outside the law and decide to walk away from a contract that we signed in good faith back in November and February.
Darryl, business-wise though, was it the right decision? I believe that one of your very high-profile directors has resigned today over the decision.
Well, that's disappointing, Tony, and that's probably what's happened with this particular scenario. You know, I know one of our directors wasn't very happy. We didn't get a unanimous decision in the boardroom, and he did suggest that he might withdraw. But at this point in time, I'm not sure that's happened. But this is what this has led to, unfortunately. And he's been a great supporter of the club from day one, and he's been a great support to me. So that's disappointing.
Darryl, you mentioned long-term financially, it would have probably been better to go Super League, and I guess that's a long way down the track. What about in the short term? What was there a major difference between the two packages? Well,
there was. One of the major differences was, I think, Gary, is that they had a competition, the ARL, and the other competition still, Clayton's competition, is still going to be there at some stage. But, you know, the court proceedings, everybody keeps on forgetting about the court proceedings and the legalities of this. You know, they might not have a competition in 1996, and if they do, well, obviously we're going to be competing against them. But, you know, there's a lot of, I think, unanswered questions, and we just decided that's the way we wanted to go because of the, the commitment we made to the ARL back in February.
Darryl, the Crushers haven't picked the best of years to start their rugby league sort of future, and the first year with Super League and all the drama. How do you envisage the Crushers' long-term future in, say, 3 or 4 years down the track? Well,
that probably hasn't changed all that much, Murray. You know, we always knew we were going to do it tough in the first year, but obviously this has put us behind that, I believe. You know, and I've been really disappointed with the way we've probably played away this year. You know, we haven't gone as well on the field as I hope we have, but off the field I think we've done things very, very well. The club's going well, you know, in relation to the Leeds club and also the football club. But, you know, we've got a 3-year plan, a 5-year plan. Obviously we're going to have to revisit those now because, you know, things have changed. And but, you know, we've got a long-term future. You know, in 3 years we want to be one of the competitive sides in this competition. You know, we've got to be pushing up for a top 5 spot, and you know, in year 5 we want to make sure we bring the premiership home to Queensland.
Darryl, the decision wasn't unanimous. How much damage control, how much smoothing over do you have to do in the next few weeks for those who were in favour of joining Super League? Well,
you know, obviously, you know, we're on a 5-man board, Chris. You know, and you know, I'm not going to say how the vote went, but you know, it wasn't unanimous, and obviously that was reflected in what Tony just said, which I wasn't aware of. You know, I've probably worked on the damage control in the last couple of days because, you know, I wanted this board to stay together because it's been a good board for me, and you know, but obviously if someone decides that they want to take their leave, well, you know, I can't stop them, but it's just disappointing.
How are the players feeling at the moment, Darryl?
Well, that's a bit of a problem too, Kevin, you know, and I think, you know, I just want to reassure the players that there will be no discrimination. You know, the blokes signed the contracts with there's 9, Tony, yeah, I believe so. Anyhow, 9 Super League players that signed the contracts. You know, I just feel, you know, as I just suggested to the players, they've got a contract with me. Most of them have got a contract with the club for 1996. I just want them to honour that contract. But after that, you know, I wish them well, and And obviously they've made their decision to go to Super League, and I don't hold any grudges to them.
Darryl, you've been under immense pressure as I see you in the office. Sometimes your head looks like as red as a beetroot at times. You're under that much pressure.
Pull his hair out, he is.
Yeah. But explain to the people that this is, you know, we've got 100 odd jobs there that are people's livelihoods. We've brought people from all around the world virtually playing football. So it's the decisions.
The
people,
decision wasn't just for myself, obviously, and in the club. You know, as I said, we probably employ in excess of 120 people, and you know, it was very, very important. We sat down and we analysed the decision that, and the 9 players who've gone to Super League. You know, it's obviously disappointing for them. They were really disappointed last night because I believe most of them do want to stay with the club. But
I think it's great for the people of Brisbane, really, because if there are 2 competitions, we don't know what's going to happen yet, but if there are 2 comps, we're going to see every team in either comp come to Brisbane, and that hasn't happened the last few years. Unfortunately, we haven't seen Canberra or Manly. If there are 2 comps,
that's a good point too, Gary. You know, I hope it doesn't go that way, to be fair, because I think, you know, both competitions are going to struggle. I think, you know, and one is going to throw the most money out is going to obviously win. But you know, we don't need that in our game at present. You know, the game's very, very unstable, and a lot of the supporters are disenchanted. We look for what's happening with baseball in America, and you know, if we don't learn from that, I think we're very, very
But the
dumb.
people from Brisbane will see all the best sides up there.
Obviously, yeah.
Darryl, but you're one of the very few people who've been privy to the intricacies of both competitions. You've spoken to Super League and the ARL in the last couple of weeks. Is there a chance that we're going to have some conciliation? Is there a chance we're going to have next year an elite 12-team competition, do you think?
Well, Tony, you know, I've always said from day one, and we've probably been consistent right through this, you know, from November last year, you know, we believe in the Super League concept. We believe there's far too many teams in Sydney, and we believe the rationalisation of our competition is inevitable. However, we believe it should be controlled by the ARL, and we haven't deviated from that in one go. But I think, you know, I believe there will be compromise. Obviously, both parties obviously got a very, very strong hand now, and you know, I think there will be a 12-team competition next year in the Super League, and I think it will be run by the ARL.
And speaking of that compromise, we will be talking to ARL Chief Executive Ken Arthurson a little later in the show. Please now thank Crushers Chief Executive Darryl Vandervelde. Time now for another of our...
Martin Locke. Back to Ford, who is backing up and away now to Horsnell. He's ripped through, looks for support, goes himself, stretches out. Brett Horsnell scores a great try.